Prepare yourself. Put on your spandex. Lace up your boots. Wrap your wrists. Hide your razor blade. Head to gorilla position. Grease up your hair. Apply baby oil. Okay, apply more baby oil. Get into Gimmick. Keep your ears open and your mouth shut. Have fun and be safe out there, brother. Welcome to Iron on Wrestling. Now your host, Gregory Iron.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome to episode 5 of Iron on Wrestling. I am your host, Gregory Iron.
Pardon the interruption.
Oh, there he is.
On time as always.
Yeah, my
yeah,
co-host.
Aaron Bauer in the house.
Yeah, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm okay.
I'm so excited about today's episode.
Why are you so excited?
Well, this is the episode where we talk about religion
What?
and politics.
What? No, we're not. We're not going to talk about those things.
Wait, what?
Unlike
What?
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 Unlike Stone Cold Steve Austin, who sometimes he doesn't like to talk about those things, but for some reason, we started recording an episode of his podcast last year, and right before that, he mentioned how he doesn't like talking religion and politics, and then all of a sudden, we're talking about life and mildly talking about politics and how the world's going crazy, and we're actually going to hear a snippet of that audio. It was unreleased audio that we used while we were trying to record another edition of the podcast. We were using the audio and the video for my Wrestle Days documentary, which is available on YouTube now. So no one's ever heard this stuff. It's going to be out there in the world today, and you're going to get some unique insight and I think some content and some stuff from Stone Cold Steve Austin that you never heard before. I've heard a lot of interviews with Stone Cold, and in the moment, I know I've never heard 90% of the stories he told me, so I think we got an exciting episode today.
Well, a little peek behind the curtain. I've heard this before.
Have you?
Yeah.
When'd you hear it?
I was there.
No, you weren't. You were lying. This was in Los Angeles at 317 Gimmick Street.
Right, I remember being there.
You weren't there.
I was playing pool.
That's not even true at all.
I mean, I was swimming in the pool. No?
I mean, I think he has a pool, but I haven't seen it, so.
What?
Okay.
It's a what?
It's going to be a great episode today, but before we get going, I have to remind you, obviously you've downloaded this podcast on some website that you like downloading podcasts on, and I encourage you to continue to do so. You can like, subscribe, download the podcast on all available platforms. That's including iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Pandora, all the places that you like to download your podcast.
Can you get it on Google Play?
You can get it on Google Play, yeah.
What about Stitcher?
I just mentioned that.
Okay.
Are you an actual moron? It's unbelievable. So make sure you like, subscribe. If you're downloading on iTunes, make sure to leave us a 5-star review so people know that you like the podcast, and it helps us raise up the ranks.
Frog Splash review.
I don't even know what you're doing right now. Is this a reference that I don't understand?
People that listen to the ENC
okay.
Pod of Awesomeness will get it.
All right. I've listened to Edge and Christians. I'm not a religious guy. Edge is a friend of mine.
You're not a religious guy.
I'm not a religious listener.
Okay.
I'm also
I knew we were going to talk about religion.
I don't want to talk about religion, but
I'll make you talk about religion.
I'm not the most religious guy in
Hey,
the
let's
world.
talk. You know what religion I want to talk about?
What's that?
My favorite passage from the Bible.
What is it?
Austin 3:16.
I had a feeling you were going there. So basically today, obviously, we'll get to the interview with Stone Cold in a little bit.
Okay.
Some of the things I wanted to talk about today is like, I don't know, some of our first interactions with pro wrestlers, maybe some of our good and bad interactions, because I got to tell you, and I've mentioned it in episode 0 of the podcast briefly. If you guys haven't listened to it, go back and download it. It was a test podcast.
Don't do that. It's not worth it.
To get the things rolling. For
Real terrible podcast.
It's me talking by myself. It's about 20 minutes, but basically,
nobody to bounce things off of.
You know, the first time I met Stone Cold and I went to his house to do a podcast, I was very nervous.
Oh, really?
And,
you never told us that before.
I've mentioned it a time or two.
Oh, yeah, all the time.
And
here, you dropped something. Oh, wait a minute.
Okay.
Steve Austin's name.
The first time I went over there, I was very nervous, obviously, because Stone Cold is arguably the greatest wrestler of all time.
And your favorite.
He's one of my all-time favorites. If Hogan was like my number one as a kid, Austin was definitely my number one as an angsty, rebellious teenager.
Right? Yeah.
So basically when I was rolling up to his house in my Uber, I remember being so frightened and nervous. And I remember I pull up and I see him standing outside the gate of his house and he's wearing mismatched camo. And all of a sudden all the nerves went away because I'm like, what the fuck is this guy doing wearing mismatched camo, New Balance? And I shook his hand. He was the coolest guy in the world. And we sat down and obviously recorded the podcast and then recorded a second episode. And the most humbling and the coolest thing about the experience wasn't the actual podcast itself, but it was like the 3.5 hours that I sat there in his house with him after. And we just talked about things. Not only could I never imagine sitting down talking with Stone Cold Steve Austin in general, but I mean, we weren't just talking about wrestling. We were talking about things that I could have never imagined, like life and like past relationships and just happiness and where I was going as a wrestler and like how do I get there and just I don't know. It
doesn't even seem real.
It still doesn't.
Or maybe I should say it sounds surreal.
Yeah, it was very surreal. And the thing that sticks out most about that was after the fact where, after my interaction with Steve that night, it was so good. I go back to my hotel room and it felt like a good first date. Mm-hmm. And I was like, do I text him or do I
have to wait 2 days?
Yeah, do I have to wait 2 or 3 days? Do I play with the rule? And I remember slowly passing out on my bed and all of a sudden my phone vibrates and I look at my phone and it's a text message from Steve, and he says, "Hey man, I really like talking with you today. Best of luck to you, and if you ever need anything, give me a holler." And I took that to heart.
Yeah.
Like it was one of those things where it's like, if there's anyone who's gonna reach out like that, and it's gonna be Stone Cold Steve Austin, who's gonna offer to give me insight or advice or just conversation when I need it, I should probably take that. And obviously, any wrestler should take advice or insight from veterans of all shapes and sizes. But of course, if it's Stone Cold Steve Austin, I think you should jump on that. And so I did. And so we start having these phone conversations over the course of the last year and a half, 2 years now. And it's incredibly surreal when I'll call him and he'll miss my call and I'll leave a voicemail and I'll talk shit to Stone Cold Steve Austin.
You're cutting promos.
I'm cutting promos.
Yeah, because I've been there with you when you've done this.
And then he'll call back, and I'll purposely not answer, so he'll leave a voicemail.
This is like a running gag between the two of you, correct?
Yeah.
So hold on. You, Gregory Iron, and Stone Cold Steve Austin, WWE Hall of Famer.
Yep.
Former multi-time world champion.
Yep.
Arguably the favorite wrestler of everyone's of all time. You guys have a have a phone tag running gag.
Yeah, where we leave each other voicemails. Like I'll purposely won't answer because I know he'll leave a voicemail because that's what he does, and he'll ramble for like 2 or 3 minutes, and he'll challenge. The first time he ever left a voicemail, he challenged me to a match at PWG, which I've never worked for PWG. I can't imagine I'll ever work for PWG. That's not exactly
if
my
it's
style.
with Austin. I bet they book you.
Yeah, if Austin said like, "Hey, I want a match at PWG with Gregory Irons,"
which he said in the voicemail.
Yeah.
Because I've heard it.
Yep, and I remember just laughing and like giggling like a small child.
That's wonderful.
Because it's ridiculous, right? And so we leave these voicemail promos for each other, and there's been times where we've just talked psychology and stuff on the phone, wrestling psychology, and when I worked with Brian Pillman Jr. about a year ago, and leading up to that match, I was asking for Austin for ideas, and he was giving me some stuff that he used to do with Pillman Sr. And I don't know, like they were these incredibly surreal life moments. So basically, I guess my point in all of this is like, I don't know, like sometimes there's this fear of meeting your heroes, you know, like whether they're going to be like the coolest guy ever or like an incredible piece of shit, obviously Austin is a businessman, like through friends of friends is how I got on the podcast. So it could have been just one of those things where like he could have just gone through the motions. This is business as usual. Let's do a 60-minute podcast and I'm never going to talk to you again. But like the way he's extended his hand like for advice and friendship, like it's been a crazy thing.
Yeah.
And so
look, you know what? I want to say this. I don't know if you remember this, but 3 years ago, I think it was about 3 years ago, you and I worked the same place. we were walking out, I think, for lunch into maybe into the parking lot. And I don't know if you were getting karate lessons from that old woman at the time.
That's a story for another day.
Yeah. But I had made a suggestion that we do a podcast together.
Yeah.
And you said, well, what would we talk about? Because there's a million wrestling podcasts.
Yep.
And I said something like, well, I don't know. It doesn't have to be just wrestling. We could talk about stories, but it'll probably all lead back to wrestling. And you said, yeah, I'll keep that in mind. And then I figured you just blew off the idea.
Yeah.
And then, so last year, you go to visit Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Yep.
And I think he comes at you with an idea.
Mm-hmm.
Something about, you guys talk about, you should do a podcast.
Yeah.
Now, here we are, almost a full year later.
Yeah.
And we're on episode 5.
Episode 5.
Of Iron on Wrestling.
Uh-huh.
How great is that? I mean, it's just weird. Like, we had an idea at one point, you and I had talked about. It was kind of like, there may be too many wrestling podcasts out there. We would probably suck.
Yeah.
Whatever. And then Stone Cold Steve Austin tells you you'd be good doing a podcast.
Yeah, and
right?
and that's
and you could use material that you guys spoke about?
Sure. And it's just one of those things where it's like, you know, like you're one of my closest friends, so sometimes, you know, when you're close with friends or family, you think like you're just stroking your ego. Like, it's kind of one of those things where it's like, you know, if you're funny and people say you should try stand up, and like stand up is not a fucking easy thing to do, right? You just can't go on stage and do stand up. Like, I think in terms of wrestling, I'm able to go out in front of a crowd and I could do comedy wrestling, and I could sit with my friends and like we can have this witty banter, and I could tell jokes in that context, but I could never go on stage and like do stand-up comedy. It's not the same thing. So like in this instance where like my friends tell me like you should have a podcast, and now that the podcast exists, all these guys are like reposting the podcast and said, I wanted to tell Greg 2 years ago or 3 years ago or 5 years ago we should have a podcast. It's like, well, you're just saying that because my friend. But Austin, who didn't know me from a hole in the ground, took the time to say like his feedback was that they could see me interviewing Steve. Like, it kind of opened those doors, like gave me a little bit of the courage, kind of like in the same way that, you know, when I saw Gowan, I didn't know exactly that I wanted to be a wrestler in that moment, but seeing him perform with one leg, that was the first time where it's like, maybe this is something that can happen. So Austin kind of opened that floodgate of like, maybe I can have a podcast, and so here we are. But like, so basically, I mean, we've met a lot of wrestlers over the years, and some of them have far exceeded the hype, and others have not been so kind. What was the first wrestler you met?
All right. Well, here we go. I think the first wrestler I met was the Iron Sheik.
Okay.
Again, I was security guard at a hotel,
and
there was an independent wrestling show.
What year is this?
1995.
Okay.
And it was at a local high school. Iron Sheik was booked. I wasn't sure. There was a little rumbling that the Iron Sheik would be staying at the hotel that I was securing. And the Iron Sheik walks in. This was about 1 o'clock in the morning. He had a case of beer under each arm.
Okay.
So the promoter checked him in, and I walked up immediately, and I said, sir, can I help you with your bags? And he said, no, but you can help carry this beer up to my room.
I feel like that's not how he sounded.
Well, then you say it like how he sounded, because I can't do the Iron Sheik.
Could you help me carry the beer up to your room? I don't know.
Yeah, and he had no shirt on.
No shirt with this big like beer
with that huge
like he has like 1 or 2 abs popping out, right?
Yeah, and then that like hernia belly button.
Yep.
So, but I was in awe of him. I mean, dude, that was the guy.
He was the guy that
like the main villain
to Hulk Hogan in 1984.
When I started watching wrestling, the first reason I started watching wrestling was the Saturday morning cartoon.
Yeah.
And I saw the Junkyard Dog.
Yep.
I thought he was Mr. T.
Okay.
So then I went to watch wrestling, and Mr. T was actually on wrestling.
Yeah.
And he was my favorite. I love the A-Team and whatever. So the Iron Sheik was always like a main villain. So here I am meeting the Iron Sheik, taking his beer up to his room, helping him, whatever, get into his room. So the Iron Sheik tells me the next morning he would like to give me an autographed picture of him for me being so helpful. And he gets up the next morning and invites me to join him for breakfast. Now, I'm getting off of work. I worked like midnight to 8 or something. And so 8 o'clock in the morning, he's down eating breakfast, invites me to come over. I can't stay, whatever. He gives me this autographed picture of him, which I still have and I can find. And, however, he's going to wrestle later that night at the high school.
Okay.
So he also leaves me several tickets to go to the event. So myself, the guy I was training with, Sal, I talked about him, my buddy Brett Morgan, who was also security guard at the time with me, the three of us went to this event, and the Iron Sheik got in the ring because he was main eventing against, what was his name? Howard the Animal Steel.
Get the fuck out of here. Now at this point, you're just making enough to shoehorn
Nope.
Animal Steel stories into every episode of this podcast.
Listen to me. This guy is everywhere with me for the first several years of my wrestling life.
Yeah.
So we go to the show. The Iron Sheik interrupts. There was like a promo or something. He comes out. It was two guys that were in red, white, and blue Zubaz pants and white turtlenecks, which were G-Mo and the Juggernaut.
Okay, the Theater of Pain.
Yeah, they got in the ring, and they were the first to take the challenge on the Persian clubs.
Now, in the ring, for those of you that don't know, and please do some research on the Theater of Pain, they are supposedly the only undefeated tag team champions in the history of professional wrestling, and there have been a couple incarnations of the Theater of Pain. Now, this time it was G-Mo and the Juggernaut, which, by the way, on occasion, the Juggernaut wore a Magneto helmet, so that tells you how fucking intelligent this man was. And so then there's other incarnations of the Theater of Pain that consist of G-Mo and Psycho Mike, and when G-Mo and Psycho Mike had falling outs over the years, G-Mo and the cleverly named Alcoholic. There's been a lot of...
I don't remember any of that. I do remember the first two that you talked about.
Alcoholic is more in the last decade, but so this was the Juggernaut and G-Mo version.
Right. Now, these were the same two guys who would eventually be in the ring and give me my tryout.
Yes.
When I went to the wrestling school.
Yep, when they tried to charge you $3,000 and said you had what it takes, which
That's
we talked
right.
about in episode 1.
Right. So if you haven't heard episode 1, I highly suggest you go back and listen.
Go back in the archives.
The archives are there. So, the Iron Sheik beats both of them. Then there's a firefighter that comes out. So this is like almost, I would compare it to the Lex Luger angle, where he comes off the helicopter.
Yeah.
And he's trying to slam Yokozuna.
July 4th, 1993 on the USS Intrepid.
Right. So this is 95, and they're recreating this in the ring with the Iron Sheik and the Persian clubs. And the first two guys dressed up as All-Americans, original Americans. They can't get the job done. A fireman comes out. He can't get the job done.
Now, let me interrupt you for a second to point out that
Pardon the interruption.
Pardon the interruption. This isn't like a worked gimmick, because for those of you that don't know, the Persian clubs, they're like, I mean, describe the Persian clubs. They're not small little rinky-dink clubs.
They're big like sledgehammers,
okay,
but almost like mallets, like those things that maybe you do at a carnival where you take the big mallet and then you hit the button and something goes up and rings a bell and you win a panda bear or something.
Yeah, and when you the challenge of swinging the Persian clubs is like you have to almost like you hold your arms in like a curl position, right? And it's like I think it's like dependent on, I feel like, forearm strength, right? Like
right.
What would you say? Like, is that where it mostly lies, in the forearms?
It's the forearms, yes.
Okay.
And at the time, I had just won like weightlifter of the year, and the high school Olympics to be
Oh,
like.
yeah, you were jacked back in the day.
Right.
Not so
I
much
was just-
now. But,
yeah.
Time that served you well.
Right. Well, look, I was 18 back then,
Yeah.
and I was very, very strong. And so the Iron Sheik is looking into the crowd. He challenges any fan after several attempts by wrestlers and firefighters and such. Did no good. He challenges any fan. He looks. He sees me in the crowd, and he calls me out to come into the ring and take the Persian Club challenge. I couldn't believe it. I was beyond thrilled.
How many people were in this crowd?
Maybe 25.
Now, did he pick
Maybe
you? Do you
50.
think that like it was just the odds of it, or was it because he saw you last night?
He didn't know me. He didn't remember it was me.
Okay, well, yeah, he probably was 3 sheets to the wind.
He had 2 cases of beer.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
didn't know me. And I wasn't wearing my security guard outfit. You know, I was
Okay.
dressed like in a Flint Rubble Bubble Cakes t-shirt,
Yeah.
and I had like a Subway visor on or something like that.
Okay.
So I get in the ring. I get the Persian clubs. He shows me exactly how to do it. I'm swinging these clubs. And I think to beat him, because I remember back in the day you had to do like 100 to beat him or something.
Yeah, something ridiculous.
This one you had to do 20.
Okay.
So I got 16, 17, 18. He stops me.
Really?
This is the total heel $1 million man thing.
Yeah.
Nope, you're doing it wrong. You're disqualified. Disqualify this man, he kept telling the ring announcer.
Yeah.
This man's disqualified.
Jesus Christ.
So, unofficially, I mean, I definitely had 2 more swings in me. I got to 18.
Yeah.
I was going to beat him. Or I was
How
going
many,
to
how many do you think you could have got, realistically, without exaggerating?
I could have probably done 10 more, 15
Really?
more.
Okay.
But I was tired.
Yeah.
I knew I was tired. But, dude, the adrenaline, because I wanted to be a wrestler, and this was before I had called about joining this wrestling federation, about going to train or anything.
Yeah.
But I thought this might be my way in.
Sure.
Somebody's going to see me here. The Iron Sheik's going to put in a word after he knows how strong I am.
Yeah.
I'm going to be in WWE. I don't know, WWF at the time.
Yeah, why not?
Maybe this is something. And George the Animal Steel's here.
Yeah, George.
Because that's what he was portrayed as.
Right.
So I thought I was in. I got stopped. I put the Persian clubs down. And I was disqualified. I had to go back to my seat.
Crush your dreams.
Yeah.
That was it.
And then Animal Steel came to the ring.
There's no way this guy did it.
No. Animal Steel came to the ring and said he was challenging the Iron Sheik for their match to start right here, right now, in front of all these people in this very ring.
Well, that's the only way you can issue a challenge. You got to say right here, right now, in front of all these people.
But it was Animal Steel, so he said, "You,
Oh, okay.
Elizabeth,
Come on.
match here." And the place went nuts.
Uh-huh.
And the Iron Sheik got out of the ring. And you know why this happened?
No, tell me.
Because Animal Steel couldn't get into the ring.
All right.
So
What?
Iron Sheik gets out of the ring. The match starts out of the ring. They each throw the worst punches I've ever seen in my life.
Okay.
I mean, you know, I've seen you punch. These are worse than yours.
Hey. Come on.
So, no, they proceeded to have the absolute worst match I've ever seen in my life.
I wish there was footage of this.
And I may have it somewhere. I gave all my footage to Chandler Biggins.
Yeah.
So I don't know where that footage lies now, but there's tons of footage. I mean, I videotaped. There's videotape of me swinging the Persian clubs because I had a friend of mine record that. Sal recorded it for me while I was swinging the clubs.
You got to find this stuff so we can post it.
Yeah.
Neat.
Sal just texted me a couple days ago, said he still has my video camera. So that may have the footage on it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Jeez. Well, that was an interesting first wrestling interaction. Mine was...
Double count out. Let me tell you the finish of the match.
Go ahead.
Double count out. A match which never started in the ring ended 10 seconds after it began,
Okay.
double count out.
Wow.
They went over to a table, and people started to chant table,
Uh-huh.
and they walked by it and punched each other again, and then just went to the gimmick tables and started selling
Come on.
their wares.
That's ridiculous, man. Jeez, and I can't imagine what their shirts that they were selling looked like in 1995.
There was no shirts.
What were they selling?
It was just pictures.
Just pictures. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, nobody was, that advanced then, really.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So my first wrestler was Lex Luger, and it's not like a good story like that. But
I'll
it's
be
just like,
your hero.
yeah. Well, it was actually August of '95, so it was like 3 weeks before we went to WCW because they did a show in Cleveland, and it was my first.
Who did a show in Cleveland?
WWF.
Pronouns, pal.
Yeah, pronouns. And so it would have been going to that event would have been my first show at the Gund Arena because it used to be at the old Richfield Coliseum when the WWF would come to town. It was a house show, but I didn't have tickets. My mom heard on the radio that Lex Luger was going to be at a Subway signing autographs, like not a Subway like station, a Subway restaurant. And I remember thinking like when we went there, like there's going to be a line around the corner. I'm never going to be able to meet him. And we show up, there's no one outside. Walk in, there's two guys sitting at a table eating Subway. Do not give a shit about Lex Luger, who's sitting in there with a guy from the radio station waiting to sign autographs. And I met him. They had a stack of free tickets, and they gave it to us, and we went to see the show that night. But I remember I forgot to shake Lex Luger's hand. So I was like 9 years old at the time. And I remember I tugged my mom on the shirt. I said, Mom, I didn't shake Lex Luger's hand. She said, well, go back and shake his hand. And so I went back over there, and I stood there for what felt like an eternity just staring at Lex Luger, talked to this guy from the radio station, and eventually he looked at me and said, what do you need, buddy? And I just stuck out my hand, and he smiled, and he shook my hand, and I just walked away. I didn't say anything. But, like, I don't know why that was so important to me that I needed to shake his hand. I guess
Well, you knew proper
then,
wrestling etiquette.
I knew etiquette
brother.
before I was even told it. It was ingrained in my mind somehow. But I will tell you, the worst interaction I had as a fan, and I haven't talked about this in a long time. And actually, I was on a show with him a couple weeks ago, and I don't say hi to him. I don't shake his hand because it actually is kind of a shitty thing. So they did Hardcore Homecoming back in 2005 at the Agora.
Yeah, I was there.
And I got free tickets to go because it did not draw well. It was ran by Shane Douglas. Draw was not good, and so I got free tickets, and I went there. And I remember at the time, specifically, I didn't have a job. I was in between jobs for some reason, and I took
the Agora is the place that NXT runs down.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that's where NXT runs the events there when they show up in Cleveland, and so I got free tickets. I took my little brother, who is a big fan of wrestling too, and I remember not having a job. I specifically had $20.
Yeah,
and
so that covered parking.
Well, no, I think I got parking for free, or I don't know what the deal was, but I didn't pay for parking. I think I might have got dropped off there, but anyways, I know I specifically had $20, and so there's all these like ECW guys. They're like Jerry Lynn was there, I think, and maybe Balls Mahoney, Axel Rotten, maybe.
Yeah,
Francine was there.
Wasn't one of the Public Enemy there?
One of the Public. It was Johnny Grunge was there.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to remember who else. But it doesn't matter. The one guy I wanted to meet out of all of them that was there was the Sandman. And so I remember I got a picture with the Sandman, and it was I gave him my $20. I took the picture with him. It was a Polaroid because, so that's what it was back at that time. And I got the Polaroid, and I was like so excited to meet the Sandman, and I gave him my $20. The charge for the Polaroid with Sandman was $10, and he signed it for you. So I gave him the 20, and I was so pumped, and I had this Polaroid, and I walked away, and as I'm walking away, and I see him, he's like taking pictures of the fans, and I'm like, oh shit, like he didn't give me change. So I walked back up to him, and I said, hey, Sandman, I gave you $20 for that picture, and you didn't give me change. He's like, no, you didn't. And then like in my head, I'm like, oh, come on. Like I literally only had $20. So I know I gave him a $20 bill, and I was like, yeah, I did. And he's like, no, you didn't. And I was like, yeah, I gave you $20 bill. And he said, guess what? Pictures just went up to $20 each.
He said that to you?
He said that. And I remember like walking away like defeated and kind of being like, you carny piece of shit. And like, so Sandman, if someone is communicating with the Sandman, because I refuse to,
Right.
You owe me $10, motherfucker, from 2005 when I was just a little handicapped fan just wanting a picture with you, man. And I thought that was like a shitty thing. So that's my my nice little first story and my worst interaction with a wrestler as a fan. But, talking about fans who may transition into wrestlers, over the years, there have been a lot of, trained wrestlers that couldn't really think of the best gimmick for themselves. So they kind of copy and paste another gimmick. When I was sitting with Stone Cold Steve Austin in Los Angeles...
I'm sorry, who were you sitting with?
Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Oh, in Los Angeles.
The WWF champion, I believe, 6 times. Very popular for his period of time. You might have forgotten about him. But I was sitting with him, and one of the questions I asked him as we're talking, because I remember him, and I found it funny, I said, hey, did you ever see any of like the Stone Cold impersonators that were doing your gimmick when you were on top? And he looks at me and goes, Evan Colder? And I said even colder. Yeah. And he's like, yeah, I know him. And so even colder, Mike Austin was a guy back in the late 90s, early 2000s who impersonated Stone Cold Steve Austin and got bookings, and people thought he was Stone Cold Steve Austin. Did you ever have any interactions with Even Colder?
No, but I remember watching on the news one time, local news, schools, elementary schools were booking Even Colder to come in and talk to their students.
Really?
Yes, and he was teaching them how to do the stunner the proper way.
No.
In the classroom. That's how I remember it. And I couldn't believe it. And it made me furious. Despite me, having a relationship with Howard, the Animal Steel.
Jesus Christ. Yeah. What are the odds of that? You're real mad about Even Colder, and then you're like best buds with...
We're not best buds. We like to eat ribs together.
Jewelry selling, rib eating, freaking Howard Steele. I don't remember if you know the news story from, I think it was like 2002 or 2003. Austin did, when I brought it up.
Which one, Mike or Steve?
Steve knew the Mike Austin story. He actually got in trouble in a Walmart in Indiana in like 2002 or 2003 for setting up a table and impersonating Stone Cold Steve Austin and taking money from people. And he actually, I think he got arrested.
Yeah.
Do you remember that story at all?
I kind of do.
Yeah. So and I don't know what exactly got charged with or anything, but I remember it was all over the internet. And actually, I found out not too long ago that Mike Austin passed away, unfortunately. So it's sad, but he did this rip-off gimmick, and it's pretty popular in the Midwest that he got around as this false Stone Cold Steve Austin. Now, this story doesn't involve.
Do you think that he actually look that much like him, or was he just a bald dude with a goatee?
I think he was
because that's kind of how I felt.
I feel like I could see it, but I wouldn't be like, that's Stone Cold Steve Austin.
The kind of the same way we feel about when you look at the pictures of Howard, the Animal Steel.
Yeah. If you
look at George the Animal Steel, the pictures next to each other, you go, oh, there's no way.
Yeah.
But if Howard the Animal Steel is just out in public.
Mm-hmm. You from a distance, you'd be like,
that guy's bald and fat, and hairy.
So I could kind of see how people would get duped. I don't remember who told me the story. I thought it was you, but someone told me they did a show with Even Colder one time, and he was he gave some terrible stunners and stuff. I mean, if you guys want, there are a couple YouTube videos on obviously YouTube where you can watch Even Colder in action. I'll post some of them to the social media to make it easier for you guys. But he did something on some show where he was drinking beer and throwing the beer cans at the crowd and crushing them. And some hillbilly walked up to one of the beer cans and picked it up off the ground. And this guy at the show audibly hears this random hillbilly fan go, "Oh man, I got Stone Cold Steve Austin's beer can. I'm gonna sell this on eBay." And I'm just like, "Are you kidding me? There's no way you thought that was actually Stone Cold Steve Austin." There was also it wasn't Even Colder. But Gargano once told me a story where he was at a Cleveland Wrestling Alliance event, which was run by Gmo.
I hope this is the story that
this is
I
the
think
story.
It is.
And
I love this.
So it was an outdoor event. Now on this flyer, CWA is notorious to this day, false advertising wrestlers that will not be at the show.
Oh, give me a chance to tell a story after you.
So they advertise Stone Cold Steve Austin, okay? So at this outdoor event. So at some point during the show, all of a sudden, like there's like right before they go to intermission, they have all of a sudden like in a distance, there's a black truck driving towards the ring, okay? And out of I actually got to tell Steve Austin the story. He's like, what the fuck? So there's a black truck driving towards the ring, and he gets close enough, but not too close. This man in the black pickup truck, as he drives by, he's blasting Stone Cold Steve Austin's entrance music out of his truck. Bald man with a goatee. Might be Stone Cold, but we're not sure. And all he does is, as he's driving by, he slows down, drives by real slow, and just sticks a middle finger out the window and just keeps driving, takes off, and he's gone. So that was the appearance of Stone Cold Steve Austin that they advertised for this event.
I love this business.
Pretty incredible, right?
We're talking about fake Animal Steels,
Yeah.
fake Stone Cold Steve Austins.
Yeah.
That's the best.
And you know, before you tell your story, I maybe at some point, I don't know how I'll make it happen, but like Pete Dunne told some stories to Ricky Shane Page and I about how in the UK, when he was coming up as a kid, most of the promotions, like the UK indie scene now is thriving, but back then, most of the promotions specifically just ran shows with guys that pretended to be WWF wrestlers.
So like cosplay wrestling.
Basically like clearly a fake Kane, clearly a fake Undertaker,
Yeah.
and like I think there's some flyers out there that if I could find them, I'll post them on the social media. But like, yeah, Pete Dunne said like that it was a dog shit scene back in the UK where there was just rip off wrestlers all the time. Go ahead with your story.
CWA.
Of course.
Your favorite promotion.
Yep.
I think I might have been booked to be the cameraman for this event.
Mm-hmm.
It's when I was first training. And I believe the advertising was the dead man will appear
Okay.
on the show.
Okay.
I don't think it said the Undertaker. I think it said the dead man. So the whole show goes whatever. Now we're at the main event, which I believe is the Theater of Pain against the Crow and Silverado.
Tony the Crow.
Let's just say Tony the Crow and
Yeah.
Silverado. Okay. So this match is going on, this tag team match for the championship. The lights go out. Dong. Dong.
Uh-huh.
The lights come back on. The Undertaker was just here. That's what the wrestlers are saying.
Okay.
He's here. He was just here. Well, he's not there. But the lights went out.
Well, yeah, so obviously that's when he was
and
there.
you hear the gong.
Yeah, he showed up when the lights went out. Wasn't this the same event? Like, so half the marketing of it was, if I recall correctly, they actually did have someone had an Undertaker car, right? Like, there was like an Undertaker car with like, okay, there was one CWA.
This was probably the next show because they had advertised that, well, since he was here tonight, he's coming back next week to team, or next month to team with the Theater of Pain against these other guys.
Yeah, so then someone had like a car with like an airbrushed hood with like an Undertaker symbol, and it was really stupid and terrible. Wrestling is stupid.
Yeah.
We could have done anything with our lives, and yet here we are.
Right.
Doing a podcast about pro wrestling, right?
Yeah, one of the first shows I ever booked had an NWO Sting on it. It wasn't Sting.
It wasn't Jeff Farmer.
Yeah, it wasn't that guy either.
Yeah.
They just said he was NWO Sting. And his guy shows up that's going to be NWO Sting, and he doesn't have a black bat. So,
What does he have?
nothing.
Okay.
Well, he has a trench coat.
Yeah.
So, I have to go home during the event. And let me put this out there. I was definitely opposed to having a fake Sting, an NWO Sting,
Yeah.
on the show. Because I didn't want to be like that.
Right.
I didn't want to be that guy, I didn't want that, my promotion or my booking or whatever was portrayed like that.
Yeah.
However, we had a balcony in the building we were running. And the thought was by the people that had been in the business way longer than me, yeah, you got to have NWO Sting. This guy looks like him. He's got, dark hair.
Yeah, yeah.
So
how tall is this guy?
5'9".
Okay, 5'9". Yeah. How much is he weighing?
$160.
Okay, so he looks exactly like Steve Borden.
So I have to go home during the first match because I'm a big baseball fan, kind of like you, Greg.
Yeah, yeah.
And I had a black bat, a Cleveland Indians bat that I had gotten from, it's like a souvenir you get when you go to the game. It was a black wooden bat. And I brought that to the event and gave it to this guy that was going to be fake Sting so he could at least point the bat when he was up in the rafters. And he did that, and then I think they ended up using the bat, and it was a wooden bat, and the paint came off of it, and it ended up not being even worth anything after using it because they swung it, and it swung it at somebody who ducked, and so he hit like the ring post or something like that. And of course, it messed my stuff up, but.
Oh God! What did we get ourselves into?
What was I gonna do? Yeah, that's what I was told to do, and here's me. Is my first year. I'm just trying to get in.
Yeah.
I don't want to ruffle feathers.
Yeah. Well, this weekend I did a show that didn't have any wrestling impersonators. There was actually a bunch of talented young men and women, and there was one perfect Sean Spears on the show because I worked at IWA East Coast in Nitro, West Virginia. Nitro live, baby, live.
Wow. Yeah, I remember that because I was at Thunder, West Virginia.
You were not in Thunder, West Virginia.
I was at Raw, West Virginia.
The event was great. There was a couple hundred fans there. They were super loud and in everything. And actually, right down the street from IWA East Coast, there was a nice little toy store that I got a chance to visit. Saw some really cool stuff. I'm a big toy guy, so they had a lot of vintage stuff. So if you're ever,
I got a bunch of toys over the weekend. And a friend of mine did, too.
Oh, yeah? I can't even imagine where you're going with this.
We should probably just continue with your story.
Okay, well, so, yeah, I checked out this vintage Nitro, West Virginia toy store. It's actually called the Nitro Antique Mall. So if you like toys, if you're ever in the Nitro, West Virginia
Nitro Antique Mall.
For some reason.
That sounds like everything I want.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's like Chavo Guerrero Jr. stuff. Like he's got Pepe or what was that horse he had?
Pepe, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. It was a super cool store. It had like 2 floors. So if you're ever in the area for some reason, go out of your way to check that out if you're into toys and vintage collectibles. They had a bunch of crap there. But the show itself at IW East Coast was a blast. I actually did a little seminar before the event where I just worked with kids on psychology and promos and just match structure. And
did you show them how to do stunners?
I'd not show them any stunners, but if you think I didn't drop Stone Cold Steve Austin's name several times, then you are
more than you did today?
Super incorrect. No. Well, he's on the podcast today, technically. So,
yeah, he is.
So I have to drop his name. But that was this past weekend. Thank you, IW East Coast, for having me for the show. This coming weekend, I'll be back on the road. This Friday night, I'll be at Freelance Wrestling in Chicago, Illinois, and I'm really hoping that – did I say Chicago, Illinois? Is it Chicago,
you said it plural.
Illinois?
How many Illinois are there?
I'm an idiot. I've been going there for
Are you an
10
actual
years.
moron?
I'm not. You're the actual moron, sir. I'll be in Chicago, Illinois this weekend, Friday night, for Freelance Wrestling, and I'm really hoping that my window does not get busted out. Because I think Ryan from Pro Wrestling Tees, as well as all the great fans that bought tees that helped me pay for my windows, don't want to go through that thing again, even though I greatly appreciate the last time it happened that I was there. But it should be a good show. I'm wrestling GPA, one of the top stars in freelance wrestling, one of the top stars in the Midwest and all over the country. Spent some time in California recently, too. GPA, quite the athlete. I'll be wrestling him Friday night in Chicago. Saturday, I'll be back in Cleveland wrestling for once. I'm rarely in Cleveland doing anything. My home city. I'll be wrestling for Real Shoot Wrestling on Saturday night. I believe the bell
Real
time
Shoot
is,
Wrestling.
It's a Real Shoot. I believe the bell time is about 7:30 p.m. I don't have the exact time in front of me right now, but I think it's 7:30. So check that out if you get a chance. Real Shoot Wrestling if you're in the Cleveland area.
I'll be appearing at Fake Worked Wrestling.
I see what you did there.
Yeah.
Because, the double. All right. And then Sunday, I will be back at Alpha One Wrestling in Oshawa, Canada, way up north, doing Alpha One, and I'll be wrestling for the Alpha One Championship against Kobe Durst. And for those of you that follow me on social media or have ever heard me talk in interviews or anything, Alpha One has always been a very special place for me. I've been afforded a lot of great opportunities and had some incredible moments and matches. And for me, Alpha One has really become like a second home in a lot of ways. And I get a big opportunity for my career Sunday against Kobe Durst for the belt. And I'm really hoping to pull this one out. So we'll see what happens in Oshawa. So if you're around that area, I believe bell time it's an early bell time. I think it's 2 p.m. Check that out at alpha1wrestling.com. If you get a chance, they're all over social media, A1 Wrestling.
2 p.m. Canadian time?
Well, Eastern Standard Time, you actual moron. So check out Alpha One Wrestling. It's going to be quite the event. And Hacksaw Jim Duggan will actually be on the card as well on Sunday, which, fun fact, we didn't talk about this yet in the podcast, and I'll just say it right now. First time I was ever in a locker room.
Yeah.
Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
Yes.
First dong I've ever saw in a wrestling locker room. What a way to start with the dong of
Yeah.
Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Well, quite the 2x4, if I do say so myself.
Yeah.
Oh, so there it is.
So are you hoping for a repeat performance?
I
or?
mean, if I hear some scuttlebutt that Jim Duggan is changing, I might stumble in the locker room by accident and bump into him a time or two.
Now I hear he's got a 4x4 now.
Well, it might be. Who
Yeah.
knows, man? Maybe he's taking some Blue Chew or something, even though they're not a sponsor
What?
for our podcast.
I can't believe
don't
you
know.
said that.
Maybe they will be a sponsor for the podcast. They sponsor every other goddamn wrestling podcast, so why not? So
Hey, and I'm an actual customer. So.
you are an actual customer. So, but that's that. That's what I got coming up this weekend. But now it's time for Stone Cold Steve Austin. Now, again, in this interview, it goes about 20 minutes, and I mean, actually, it's not an interview. Like I said, it's a candid conversation between me and Austin. We were supposed to record a podcast. We didn't. We just started talking back and forth. Originally, we were supposed to watch Stone Cold versus Triple H, 3 Stages of Hell from No Way Out 2001, which is a classic match. And he for some reason, even though he suggested it, he didn't. He's very critical of his own work. And he's like, I don't want to watch that. There's stuff that I messed up in that match. I don't want to see it. And I'm like, what are you talking about? So we didn't watch the match, but I had done a lot of research in preparation for this match because I really wanted to focus on some stuff that I really never heard about. So we end up just kind of bantering back and forth about, after his neck injury in 1997 with Owen, we talk about what was the process like when he actually knew, wow, like, shit's getting real. I need to finally get this neck surgery. What did his time off look like once he got the neck surgery? Did he know if he was coming back or not? What did he say to Vince McMahon when Vince suggested his 2000 return and plans for that? There's a lot of good content in this. I think you're really going to enjoy it. And if you're listening to the audio, cool. But if you get a chance, I should have it over on YouTube. I have the actual footage, 2 shots that you can watch on YouTube right now. You can see that footage. Like I said, it's about 20 minits in length, and I think you'll enjoy it. So
Hey,
here we
wait.
go. What?
Did you ever tell Stone Cold about how I impersonate him and how good it is? Oh, hi, yeah.
I don't know why you're an Asian person. I don't.
What?
It sounds very Asian.
What?
Not from Texas at all.
What?
Just people don't want to hear us anymore. I think it's time for the interview. Ladies and gentlemen, here we go. A conversation between myself and Stone Cold Steve Austin over at 317 Gimmick Street. I've got an important question for all you wrestling fans out there. Are you looking for hard-hitting wrestling journalism that is every bit as trustworthy and fact-based as professional wrestling itself? Well, then, you've got no choice but to check out kayfabenews.com. Kayfabe News is unreal news about an unreal sport. It's the world's premier wrestling news site. Well, not exactly. I guess it's more like The Onion, but it's entirely about pro wrestling. You've surely seen some of the headlines. I'm talking like Hogan tells brother something, Cena visits injured self in hospital, or Lashley brashly lashes back at Backlash as a mismatch of trashy squash matches. They've even written a story about yours truly defeating Brock Lesnar for the Universal Championship at an indie show in Cleveland, and you never know, that might come true someday. But this isn't about me. This is about Kayfabe News, and I strongly encourage you to check out all of the stories on kayfabenews.com. And hey, if you have some time, they've got a hilarious new YouTube show, which drops every Tuesday at youtube.com/Kayfabe News. And I have a great t-shirt collection. I've got a bunch of great shirts that I've gotten that support kayfabe news, and you can get your very own just by going to prowrestlingtees.com/kayfabe news. Kayfabe news, remember, it's not fake news. It's unreal.
Material. And so we feel like talking about this illustrious morning. We started at 9 a.m. today. We did a podcast just a while ago. Now we're going to do another one. And it has been raining all night here in the main streets of Los Angeles. It was wonderful. I was out in my front yard last night. It started lightning and shit. And then my wife says, I'm going to go water the grass because there's a couple of bald patches over there where the dog's been pissing. So she puts fertilizer down. I said, man, you ain't got water. It's fixing to rain. So she couldn't believe it. It's been raining for a night and a half. Been absolutely wonderful. You roll in. You were late. I'm over here drinking coffee, trying to get jazzed up, just get the energy up. Hadn't slept in 6 days. We did an hour podcast. Normally, I never roll us out at 9 a.m. That's too damn early for me. Even though I get up about 5 or 6 every single day, I just, this is an early podcast. So I thought I'd let you lead the charge today. Got anything you want to talk about?
I don't know. Life.
What about life?
I don't know. It's pretty good.
Shit's going crazy, man.
Yeah.
In the political scene.
Yeah.
We don't want to talk about, either side.
No.
But man, there's all kinds of crazy shit going on these days. There's no etiquette. There's no, I don't know. There's no protocol anymore that's just in a mannerly fashion. Everybody's trash talking everybody. I think trash talking is good for selling tickets to a wrestling event, a UFC event, stuff like that. But I don't know when everybody's talking to each other now, and then these people yelling at people when they're trying to have dinner. People have gone over the edge. It's just a little disconcerting. And I think, okay, if we're here now, 2018, after all the shit that we've been through, everybody gets offended so damn easy, and then that's not a broad stroke as far as what I was just talking about. But dude, I just don't understand what the fuck's going on.
Yeah, no, same. I agree with your sentiment about people being offended by everything. It's like you gotta watch everything you say. It's kind of ridiculous, man. It's a crazy world out there.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
That was a short podcast.
Yeah.
We'll start over.
Okay.
I hate talking about politics and all that amount, but I just, everything's going on these days. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't want to get too political.
All right, what are you going to talk about?
I don't know. Did you want to watch 3 Stages of Hell?
That man's a piece of shit.
What?
That's horrible.
What are you talking about? You're the one that suggested it.
Well, you suggested the Rikishi.
Well, I hadn't seen the match in a while. No, I was like thinking a lot about like just your neck injury and stuff, and I feel like I don't know. I feel like no one's ever really talked in depth about like I don't know what you're doing like during that time off, like your mindset, man. Like just coming back and like you did the thing at Backlash, and I always felt like when you helped Rock win the belt, I always felt like that should have been like WrestleMania 2000. Like I felt like the whole crowd felt hot, the whole card felt hotter than WrestleMania 2000. And I also found it weird that you never did anything at WrestleMania 2000. Like I know you were there for Access, but like you weren't even on the
Which
show.
one was that? Would that have been
Anaheim.
16?
Yeah,
Yeah, I was still on the shelf.
yeah. Like I know you were there for Access though, because they show you in like a little video package for
Yeah, I remember that.
yeah. But I just always found it strange that like you did the thing at Backlash, and I just felt like that would have been more significant at WrestleMania. I thought the 4-way sucked.
Who was in the 4-way?
Big Show, Rock, Triple H.
Dude, 4-way sucked. 4-way
Yeah.
sucked just like triple threats, just like handicap matches. They all suck. If it ain't a one-on-one or if it ain't a tag, I don't know, just a little old school in that regard.
Yeah. Also, I don't know, like when you first got your neck injury, like, when you went out for surgery, like, what was the timetable that they told you for a return? Because, like, the rumblings online were always like, you might be ready for SummerSlam, and then even there was a poster, I don't know if you remember it, that came out for Fully Loaded 2000 in July, and you're on it, and it said something about the Rattlesnake getting his revenge, but, like, you weren't on the show. Like, I don't know why you were advertised for it. And that's July. You didn't come back till September. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't even remember. I mean, I know when I went out, I mean, it's gonna be like a year or 15 months, because, you know, when they take a bone out of you, it's gotta fuse together, so you can't force the bone to grow together until it grows together, so
Yeah.
it was kind of an open-ended thing. And I wouldn't even come back. You know, I was riding before on my little place outside San Antonio,
Yeah.
and I got a phone call from Bitch, and my phone rang. I was running before. I had a cooler full of beer from before, and it was Steve. I want to talk to you about, you know, an angle when you come back. And I told him, I said, man, I said, I don't think I'm coming back.
Yeah.
I kind of shocked him because, you know, he thought I'm gonna be coming back. You know, when you get dropped on your head, you know,
Yeah.
coming back is the last thing on your mind.
Yeah.
Or when you tear your dick.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I wouldn't, and so anyway, yeah, we hung up, and then of course, you know, when you start feeling stronger, then okay, this is what I do.
Yeah.
I'm just hurt, so I'm getting ready to come back.
Yeah.
So then I come back, but yeah, it was just, it was a weird deal.
Yeah.
Then I just, I remember driving to Sonic every day, because I missed the road so much. I'd get my pickup truck, and I was living outside of Bernie, Texas, and I'd drive to Fredericksburg, which is about 40 miles. And I'd go over, I'd get me a jalapeno burger with cheese and that vanilla Coke. And I'd drive home, eating my cheeseburger, and that was an 80-mile round trip, so it just made me feel like I was still on the road. And that's one thing that I did to maintain my sanity. I drank a shitload of beer, had a lot of Mexican food, and I drove to Sonic every day to get a goddamn jalapeno burger, so I had something to do.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was on the road.
Yeah.
But it was a pretty shitty period. I never forget, they called me to do the that show in Charlotte. It was live to tape, but they could sweep it up in post. And they said, hey, we want you to use this crane to blow up the DX bus. Man, I came back, I was about 275. All I was doing, couldn't work out. So all I was doing was eating enchiladas.
Yeah.
And boy, all of a sudden I showed up. I looked like shit on TV. Learned how to drive that crane, and then they had showed me how to, you know, do the boom, swing it side to side and extend it and all this other stuff. Well, when we stopped the practice, they had the boom up like that, and no one ever put it back to the original position.
Wow.
That was one thing that they never showed me, was how to you know, lower that boom.
Yeah.
So I just didn't know.
Yeah.
All of a sudden we go live, I'm doing everything to swing that thing and make it go up and down, but they didn't tell me how to put it back down, so I'm operating with it like this. So I'm madder than the fucking hornet, and I'm in there, but I'm trying not to sell it on TV, and those cranes have a glass window shield, just like that, right there in front of your face.
Yeah.
And that big ass concrete block started swinging back and forth, and then it turned this way, right at me, and it was coming right back towards that cab. And I was looking at that damn cement thing, and I wasn't selling. It's coming right towards that damn cab, and I'm looking at that thing, I'm thinking, man, I'm fixing to fucking die.
Yeah.
And right before I got about that far from that glass, it stopped and went back that way.
Oh my God.
But I wasn't gonna bail out or something, I just figured I'd get my face crushed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
No big deal. Just
yeah, I got lucky. And then, you know, after it's all said and done, by the time they put the sparks in and took it back to post, it made it look like, you know, passable. It was a pile of shit.
Yeah.
But the fact was, you know, it was a clusterfuck. Had it been live TV, it would have been an abortion.
Oh boy. Yeah, that's not
But-
good. It's like, cause like I was just thinking too, like when did you know that I know you always knew that you were on borrowed time as far as like the neck injury, but like when did it start to catch up, and like when did it become a thing where it was like, oh no, like I definitely have to get this neck surgery now.
Well, this, you see that this left hand still got, compared to this hand, you
Yeah.
see that muscle there, this one's all atrophied in, and this is all atrophied.
Yeah.
Man, all of a sudden, all of this started twitching, everything started twitching, everything started kind of atrophying. And that's when I knew I was gonna have to get something done, or it still helps.
Yeah.
But it's like when Arndolf was working with Hogan. He got kicked in the head, and his right arm started atrophying, and on something like that, if you pinch that nerve too much, it's like stepping on a water hose. Well, if you take your foot off the water hose, it'll keep going. But when you stop that nerve from sending that electricity for too long, it just stops sending it.
Yeah.
My case was different. I actually had a bruise on my spinal cord, and so, you know, this is what it is, and that'll never grow back.
Yeah.
But it was at a point where, because I had a bone spur growing into my spinal cord, and I had spinal stenosis, and I had a bruised spinal cord, which, you know, there's a white spot permanent on my spinal cord, that's never going to heal up. So I needed to get that thing undrilled. I needed to create space so that if I wanted to keep wrestling, then I could.
Yeah.
And when that first happened, I went to see Dr. Joseph Torg in Philly, and he was like the leading guy on quadriplegia. As you know, like a lot of football players, when they hit with their head down like that, you know, shit goes south, and they end up being quadriplegic. Well, basically, when I got spiked into the ground with a pile driver, same thing.
Yeah.
So I was a transit quadriplegic for about 60 seconds, and so, you know, he wasn't gonna let me back in the ring. And then, because he thought the business was a shoot. So finally, I had to tell the doctor, I said, listen, dude, I said, I think I gotta take a pile driver every single time I go out.
Yeah.
And I said, you know, I can control what I do.
Yeah.
And it's like a light went off in his head, and he goes, oh, you don't have to get pile driver every time? I said, no. I said, I ain't gotta do nothing. And he goes, okay, well then I'll clear you to slowly get back in the ring. So that's when they started putting me in, you know, tags, 6-man, stuff like that, and, you know, making my appearances, and then, you know, started going back into singles.
Yeah.
It was just a case of having to go through, you know, the waiting period.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I had to get surgery, and then I went down to see Lloyd Youngblood in San Antonio, Texas. I went over to, was it Cleveland or Cincinnati, where Dr. Bowman or whatever it was, he was kind of the hot guy back in the day. And I went through there and didn't like what that guy really had to say,
Yeah.
and didn't like the protocol. Nothing against him, I just didn't feel like that was it. I went
Yeah.
down to San Antonio, saw the neurosurgeon down there, Army trained, and man, he spent 2 hours with me, explaining everything from top to bottom. And I knew that that was the guy that needed to work on me. So anyway, I had surgery done, took the bone out of my hip, everything went good. I remember waking up at the laying in bed, there was JR sitting in the corner.
Yeah.
Jim Ross came down from my damn surgery, and so he went back home. It was cool to see him. But I was just on the shelf. I used to always see those people wearing them hard collars. I think, man, what do them collars do? And that's bullshit. Man, I was wearing my hard collar for a while, and I went from the hard collar to the soft collar, and then I could take the collar off. But when I did, goddamn, my neck was sore as shit. You don't realize what your neck actually does, holding up your fucking head.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're a real deal. And so I took that off, and then shit, my neck was about the size of my wrist by the time I come out of that damn surgery. And then when you first start bumping, it's just like talking to Flair. When Flair broke his back in that plane crash, you know, he was nervous as shit about taking his first bump. Then all of a sudden he started bumping, and it's nothing but a thing. Dude, when you have a neck injury,
Yeah.
especially being at this end of your body with it whipping down, taking a flat back,
Yeah.
it kind of fucked your head up just thinking about it.
For sure.
All of a sudden you start taking your bumps and you realize, okay, your neck's fused up, everything grew back together, so I'm good.
Yeah.
So I just started going back, and I never took another pile driver. I might have taken a back drop or two. I could always take the one on the concrete, you know, if I was going to give the guy the pile driver, but he's going to reverse it,
Yep.
you know. Kind of a giveaway, but especially when you're only this high off the guy's back, it looks way more devastating than it is. So it looks good, it feels good. You can still do it, it doesn't hurt anything. So I just started limiting my bumps, and it was a deal like that where, you know, I turned more into, you know, a brawler than a wrestler.
Yeah.
And that really worked for me as a gimmick, because the Stone Cold guy was more about kicking ass anyway. So
Right.
it turned out. I wish I would have never got dropped on my head, but the fact that I did, and then coming back from that, I mean, you had to respect the toughness that went with it, and so it kind of just built the character, built the legend, or whatever it was, and then the style was conducive to the character and what it was all about. So in a weird, twisted way, it all worked out okay, and I had to ride off with the sunset sooner than I would like to. But it worked for the character. And then as far as, you know, when I got out, in 2003, you know, I had that last match in WrestleMania 19 with The Rock.
Yeah.
It was a deal where I knew I was getting out, my hand was flaring up again, just the nerves. I was running pretty hard, but it was just like, after I had the fusion, I got a few more years out of beating the shit out of myself. And so it was time to ride off in the sunset or continue to put myself at risk and end up in a bad place.
Yeah.
You know, so that's when I made the decision to quit. I had to talk with Vince. When I wrestled that night with The Rock at 19, I spent the night in the hospital because I had that issue where She was drinking way too much caffeine and
Yep.
not drinking enough water. I kind of had that high heart rate thing happen. Never really got cleared to wrestle, but I was going to wrestle Rock. It was time for me to return the favors. And then, she said, me, Jim, shit. I'm sure his circle now, but maybe really 6 people. It was pretty kayfabe back then.
Yeah.
So maybe only about 6 people. None of the boys knew. And certainly not the Rock. Knew that was going to be my last match.
Really, he didn't even know.
And you know, Rock might have known. I can't remember, but I don't think I disclosed that to him.
Yeah.
I just know it was just time to go over because he put me over twice before.
Yeah.
In 15 and 17. But yeah, man, it was a weird day going over to the Safeco Arena, whatever it was.
Yeah.
Big ass building.
Safeco Field.
And Seattle's a good town. And it was a pretty emotional day. Just walking around because it kind of starts heading home, but that's going to be your last goddamn time in the ring. And it wasn't like I was crying and shit like that. But a couple times, your eyes get a little teared up.
Yeah.
And then we go through to do the match, and there was nothing crazy. It wasn't a fantastic match. But I remember when he pinned me 1, 2, 3, and he was cool enough to leave the ring and give me the ring because I think some people kind of knew that I was done after seeing those 3 rock bottoms in 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
But they certainly couldn't read into it.
No.
But just the way it let out, I gave them that kind of that one last middle fingers.
Yeah.
Walked up the ramp, and when I walked up the ramp, due to all the problems I was having, I just remember, man, just a sense of relief. And it felt like, people had taken, it felt like shit, just this 200-pound plate, iron plate, been lifted off my back, and I was like, well, one hand I know I was going to miss the business, and that would come to haunt me later. But the initial relief, just saying, okay, I ain't gonna put my body on the line anymore. It was a big relief.
Yeah.
So it was cool. It was bittersweet. It was weird,
Yeah.
but it was what it was. And then it took a long time to get used to being out of business because I didn't want to get out of business.
Yeah.
So it's funny, as people, back in the old days when I first got into wrestling in Tennessee, the boys would always say, hey man, you get in to get out. I mean, you go in, you make your money, and you buy a house. Back in the old days in the territory systems, this is back when houses were way cheaper. Everybody would buy their house with cash. Everybody did back in the day. That was the old school mentality because if you got fired, if you got hurt, you at least had your house. Nobody could take it from you. That's the way everybody operated. And the old mantra was, you get in, get out, make your money, and go do something else. Dude, you know the business.
Yeah.
When you get into business, you're addicted to it.
For sure.
You love the pops, you love the boys, you love the travel, you love the business, you love everything about it. It's what you do.
Yeah.
But then, so it's easier said than done.
Right.
So when you walk away from it, and you're really forced out of it, that's a hard pill to swallow.
Yeah.
And so, man, a couple years of drinking, hunting, fishing, and kind of, that order, but it was weird.
Yeah.
But all these years later, I figured, okay, I had the problems that I had, but I had to stay in. When I retired, I was 38. If I'd been able to make it till about at least 4 more years, 42, because I was feeling real good physically, other than the shit that was going on.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, if I last another 4 or 5 years, I feel pretty good right now, but I feel more like shit and have 4 more years of miles and fast living under my belt. So getting out, like I said, on the one hand, didn't want to get out. On the other hand, now that I'm where I'm at right now, probably okay that it happened the way it did.
Yeah.
Not everybody has a swan song ending.
It's true.
So
You always like downplay 19 like it was like a shit match though. It was a great match.
yeah, I had to watch on the back.
I
I just yes, I saw that one time. Well, I did it, and that was about it. I didn't feel like punching it.
I imagine would probably be emotional for you.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just hadn't watched it.
No. What about? Do you remember after that you did the angle that culminated at Survivor Series 2003, where you were like supposed to leave, where you didn't really leave, but you cut that promo in Texas. It was in Dallas. It's like Team Eric Bischoff versus Team Austin. you cut that promo post-match where, you know, you started your career in Dallas, Texas, and it's only fitting that you're in your career in Dallas, Texas. Like, I don't know, how did you feel about that promo? Because as a fan, it almost felt like it almost felt like that promo was like you saying your goodbye 6 months later that you never got a chance to say.
Yeah, I remember that barely because the way you said the promo, you know, but it made sense.
Yeah.
Because I did start there and I did finish there.
No.
Yeah. That's all I got. We all roll the sound? If you want to use part of that for your doc,
Oh, yeah, sure.
you can.
Thank you.
I'm out of gas.
Yeah.
I wasn't recording that. I hit the record button. I was man, I was telling pretty good stories there.
Yeah.
Now I don't want to try to repeat them because.
Yeah.
But if you want to use that for your dog, I mean, or part of that or whatever,
Okay.
as a whatever.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, it was good stuff. Man, should have recorded.
Everyone knows that I love good vintage wrestling merch. But when I want the best of the best, when it comes to finding vintage wrestling memorabilia, I go to the Savage Stash. The Savage Stash is your wheeler and dealer for the best in vintage wrestling shirts, hats, jackets, accessories, and everything in between. I've picked up some of my all-time favorite vintage items from the Savage Stash, and that's including the original Hunter Hearst Helmsley How to Be a Snob tee from 1995, and I've never seen that anywhere else online. And just last year, I picked up a vintage 1996 WWF Royal Rumble tee that I gifted to Johnny Gargano for his birthday. It was in mint condition, and I'm telling you, Johnny could not have been happier when he opened that up because I know the Royal Rumble in 96 meant a lot to him with Shawn Michaels winning and everything. I've also got a wide variety of fanny packs from the Savage Stash over the years, including a rare WWF Championship fanny pack from 1991, and of course, their ultra stylish green and purple 3-pocket Savage Stash fanny pack that I use to store all of my goodies when I'm on the road. Right now on SavageStash.com, they're selling exclusive Intercontinental Championship pins with interchangeable white and black straps. You can get black or white strap alone for $10, the black or the white strap with the plate for $20, or you can get both straps and the plate for just $30. That's right, $30. And if you're buying this pin or any other fanny packs, hats, or vintage merch at thesavagestash.com, you can use promo code IRON, IRON, at checkout to save 10% on your order. That's right, it's an exclusive offer to listeners of Iron on Wrestling. If you go to thesavagestash.com and buy any items at all and use the promo code IRON, the Savage Stash will take 10% off your entire order. To see all of their current or past items, go to www.thesavagestash.com, follow them at The Savage Stash on Twitter or Instagram, and like them on Facebook at The Savage Stash. Hey, what are you waiting for? If you're looking for the best in vintage merch, go to the place that can't be topped. Check out the Savage Stash, the absolute cream of the crop. Well, that was my conversation with Stone Cold Steve Austin from last October at 317 Gimmick Street, and it was quite the conversation. I hope you guys enjoyed it. But before we find out, for the love of God, if Aaron actually figured out 3 things in this week's episode.
I did.
We got to do some plugs here. Got to talk about the social media. Obviously, you can follow me at Gregory Iron on Twitter, on Instagram at Gregory_Iron. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/The Handicapped Hero. If you can't remember that, look at my website, www.gregory-iron.com. You can see content from the podcast, some photos, and you can figure out how to book me there. You can send me a message. You can book me for pro wrestling, motivational speaking, which I do quite often in schools and for organizations. So hit me up about that. Got some great rates for you. Hey, you can always get a Gregory Iron t-shirt at prowrestlingtees.com/Gregory Iron. You can find me on all those forms of social media. And, of course, you can follow the podcast at Iron on Wrestling on Twitter, Instagram, and you can find us on Facebook under that. If you like the podcast, you should download it. In fact, after you download it, particularly on iTunes, you should give it a 5-star review. Maybe leave us a little comment. And if you do that, if you leave a comment and it's very witty and creative, you screen cap it, you send it to at Iron on Wrestling. Guess what? If it's good, I'll send you a free goddamn shirt. What do you think of that?
You know who won't leave it a 5-star review or download it?
Who's that?
Jennifer.
Jennifer, you bitch.
All right, so I guess you maybe should follow me too. I am at Fair to Air, FAIRTOAAR.
Yep.
For the Twitter. And I'm also on Instagram, which I haven't done yet, but Greg keeps urging me to. And
Do it. Instagram's where it's at.
a lot of pressure, a lot of peer pressure here.
Bro, it's like a visual form of media, right? You got videos and
brother,
pictures.
brother.
And like,
So I'm there at Air Force One, AARFORCEWON.
very creative.
Yep. Yeah.
AR.
Yeah. So that's it. I already said that.
All right, cool.
You're not listening.
I was.
Once again.
You want to talk about not listening? You've proven week in and week out.
Well, I'm going to prove you wrong this week.
You don't listen to the goddamn podcast.
I love the podcast.
I need you to tell me
Yep.
3 things that you learned about Stone Cold Steve Austin, the toughest SOB in the history of the WWE, the Texas Rattlesnake, the Bionic Redneck. 3 things you learned about him today on this podcast. You got 2
I'll
minutes.
tell you this. Atrophy.
Yes.
Now, was I listening or what?
I
didn't know Stone Cold had atrophy in his fingers and his hands and his arm.
He did.
So maybe you guys bonded on something like that.
Yeah.
Good for y'all. The other thing, Sonic. I was opposed to saying this beforehand because they're not a sponsor.
Okay.
Maybe they could be.
They could be.
But Sonic, I didn't know Steve Austin loves Sonic. What, did he get a Coney dog with chili?
Jesus Christ. We don't like Sonic on this podcast.
What was he getting, a slushie?
We like Grill 'em All.
Yeah.
Los Angeles.
Oh, I love Grill 'em all.
Best burgers I've ever had in my life.
And great air fresheners for your car.
Yes, indeed.
Smells so good.
All right. A lot of pressure.
Okay.
3rd thing you learned about this interview with Stone Cold Steve Austin.
The third thing, here we go. He was the one that initially suggested me as your co-host on this podcast. He said, Greg, what? You should get Aaron Bauer. What? As your co-host. What?
How exactly did Steve find out about you? Just out of curiosity.
I'm sure he knows me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been around.
I mean, he does
National
keep it-
broadcasts. I commentated that match with you and Brian Pillman Jr.
You did.
So I'm sure he watched it.
He did.
Also, I was on PWO Prime TV.
Mm-hmm.
I've done a lot in this business. A lot. So I'm sure he knew me. I remember when I first did the Stunner. And then a couple weeks later, I watched him do it. I called it the Aaron Crusher.
Not only
That's some of the things that happened in my life.
Not only are you an actual moron, but you're a liar.
Hey, hold on. I don't know if you could hear that, but I was popping the top on a Broken Skull IPA. Drinking it. I love it.
Still lying.
I love the IPAs. Especially the Broken Skull.
I hear it's delicious, but you're not drinking that right now.
That's what I'm drinking.
No, you're
Straight up, Steve Austin.
Okay, all right. Well, that's it. We're out of time. We got to go. Next week on the podcast, we're going to have up-and-coming independent star Cody Lane.
Wow.
He's been getting around. I like to put him in the same vein as Kurt Stallion as far as world travelers go, and like how he's in the UK right now. He's going to be back in the States next week, and I have an interview that I did with him. One of the first interviews actually in the can from a few weeks back, so should be an interesting interview with Cody Lane, Oklahoma boy, born and raised, and he's been traveling the globe. I think he's about to break out, and maybe Iron on Wrestling will help him do just that.
Well, I hope it's at least as half as good as the Kurt Stallion interview was, because I was hooked.
Yeah.
I didn't know him before. I loved it, and you were cocked, locked,
and ready to unload.
Ready to unload.
That's it for this week. Come back next week. Tell everyone about us. Bye-bye.